So continuing on from my previous video on tutorials for path, this time we're going to talk about a little bit more complicated things like arcs or curves rather. So we're going to make two types of curves in this tutorial. We're going to make a quadratic Bezier curve and a cubic Bezier curve. Now, even though quadratic is technically more than cubic, right? Quad meaning 4 and cube meaning 3. The quadratic is actually simpler than the cubic Bezier curve. So I'm going to show you how this works. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a line. So let's go ahead and make the beginning here. We're going to put the beginning at, let's put the beginning of the line right here at 2050. So we're going to put it at 2050. Okay, so the code for a quadratic Bezier is the Q. And so the quadratic Bezier takes two coordinates. The first coordinate is going to be how much of a curve the curve will have, or how deep or how convex it'll be. And then the second one is where the end point is going to be. So to make this simple, since we're on the 50 line for y right here, since we're on the 50 line for y, what we're going to do is we're going to just put the point for the curve on the 50 so that we can essentially create a straight line. So we got 50 50, and then the ending, since the beginning is on 20 50, we're going to put the ending on 80 50. And we essentially get a straight line. So basically what ends up happening is, since the Q, the first coordinate is where my dot is, you're gonna see that as I bring the dot up to x50, y40, y30, and y20, it's actually gonna essentially bring the curve up this way. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're gonna bring our y to 40. And as you can see, it brings this curve up. So this first set of coordinates is actually the little dot that's pulling up on here. But notice that the dot is on the 40 and it's only brought it up halfway. So depending on how wide the arc is how tall this is going to be. So it really is up to experimentation on how you're going to do it. So in other words, if I wanted to bring it up to exactly 40, I have to bring mine exponentially up twice as high. So I got to bring it up to 30, and now it brings it up to 40 right here. So if I want to bring it up to 30, which is up 1, 2, I have to go up 4. So I have to go to 10 to bring it up to 30. There you go. You see? So if you didn't get the math that I just said, bringing it up to 10 in order to bring it up to 30, essentially what I did was imagine this as being 0. And so I'd have to go up 10 to bring it up to 5, up 20 to bring it up to 10, and up 30 to bring it up to 15, and up 40, so up to 10, so up 40 just to bring it up 20. So it's exponential, so it brings it up twice. It brings it up half as high as I bring it. And that, of course, always depends on how tall this is too. Okay, so that's the first set. Now the second set just tells you where you're going to end the dot. So if I end the dot here, then this is still going to be in the middle, so it's going to be lopsided. So for example, if I bring it to 70 50 instead of 80 50, then see, it's a little lopsided. And I can even bring it over to 50 50. Oops, yeah, 50 50, there we go. This updates instantly, so I have to be very careful. And as you can see, it brought it up, but it's kind of tugging it this way, okay? So, of course, if I brought this over to 30 50, I'm sorry, to 30 50, it's gonna basically try to pull it this way. So as you can see, since the dot is on 5010, it's pulling it this way. If I wanted to bring it down, like pulling it downward toward here, and I could go to over 50 and down 40, then it basically just pulls it this way. But remember, it's exponential. So even though I'm bringing it up to 40, it's only bringing it up halfway that way. So let's go back a bit, back to where we were, which is 50, 50. Okay, and let's bring this over to, let's see here. Let's bring this over to 40, 50. Oh, and actually what I need to do is I need to put it right here in the middle. So let's put it at 30, 50. There we go. Okay, so now we have a straight line with our dot right here on 30, 50. And I'm going to bring it up to right here to about 40. So that means I need to bring it all the way up to 20 here, I believe. Or to, let's see, since I'm going up 10, I need to bring it up to 20. So yeah, 30. So let's bring it up to 30, 30. See what happens. Okay, good. So now we have our new curve right here. And now the next part is the t. So if we put t here, basically what you're telling it is you want a new curve based on this curve, and we could put it in the opposite direction. So basically, if I tell it that I want the new curve to go from here through here like this to reflect this one, this is a shorthand. So instead of having to draw a new curve using the Q with a new Q here, you know, saying that I want it to be 50, 60, and having it to be, you know, the new ending dot and all that, instead of having to do a new computation, all I have to do is say where the new ending is going to be. So I want the new ending to be right here at 60, 50. So I put it at 60, 50. And now we have the curve continuing on the same way. So basically the T is a shorthand, basically draw the reflection of the previous quadratic. We can continue on. We can say 80, 50. So we draw a new T, and then we say 80, 50. And we can continue on. And we can just go on forever and ever and ever. And the line will continue on. Now, if I were to say, instead of 80, 50, if I were to bring it all the way back to 10, 50, let's see what happens then. So basically, it tries to draw the same height of this curve here, but it brings it across this way. So you can do some really weird curves using this T here, okay? So that's basically your quadratic Bezier in a nutshell. This first, let's back it up a little bit here. So again, this first coordinate is how high you want the curve to be and where you want the curve to be. And then the second coordinate is where you want the ending of the curve to be. So you can bring this curve up and bring the curve all the way down to, you know, let's say 50, 70. So you can say 50, 70. And so now you brought the curve all the way down. Now notice the curve used to be touching here because the beginning and the ending were in the same spot. But because you have the curve being brought all the way down, this curve has to be pulled towards the bottom here, okay? You can even bring the curve kind of up. So let's say we want it to be on 50 by 20. So now you barely have a curve because since our dot is on 30, 30, which is right here, there's barely any real pull, okay? There's a bit of a bump here, but it's a bare pull, okay? Now the next one is going to be the cubic Bezier. Now the cubic Bezier starts out the same. So we're going to start out with on M20, 50. But when you do the cubic Bezier, you have where you had one dot for the quadratic Bezier, you actually have two dots, so that now your Bezier is a little bit more, it's a little less pointy. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that. So we have the cubic Bezier, but let's put it on like we did the last time. We're going to put it on 50, 50, and then 50, 50, because those are your two dots. And then we're going to end it, since we're starting on 20, 50, we're going to end it on 80, 50. Okay, so now we have a straight line. So once again, make sure you put your commas so you know what you're talking about here, you know what we're referring to. Okay, so this first dot is right here. The second dot is right here also. And then we have the ending on 80, 50. So now, let's manipulate this. So let's kind of evenly space this. Let's put this first dot over, let's put it even. So let's put our first dot right here, which is going to be on, what's this, 40, 50. And let's put the second dot on 60, 50. Okay, so there's no change because the dots are still along this axis right here. Okay, but now we're going to bring up the first dot. So we're going to bring the first dot up, the first dot, which is right here on 20, 50. I'm sorry, on 40, 50, which is right here. Thank you. 40, 50. We're going to bring it up to here. Okay, actually, we're going to bring the dot up to 30. So let's put the dot on 30. And as you can see, it's lifted only part of the curve, and it kind of made a little bit of an S curve, just like this. Okay, and then we're going to bring the other one up to 30 also. So as you can see now, our curve is a little bit more rounded. Okay, a little bit more rounded. So let's do the same thing with our cubic Bezier, with our quadratic Bezier curve, so you can kind of see the difference. We're going to color it a little different too. We're going to make it blue. And we're starting at 20, 50, and we're going to end it on 80, 50. And we're going to put this on 50, 50. And now we're going to uncomment it. So here's our blue quadratic Bezier. Okay, so as I bring it up to here, so let's go ahead and bring it up. So we're going to change our y-axis because we're going to go along the y-axis. We're going to go, let's see, up to 30. Okay, and let's bring it to the same spot. So instead of 30, let's bring it up to, so this is 35. So this is minus 15, so minus 30. So let's bring it up to 20. Okay, so as you can see, we got the same idea on both. See how they overlap. Okay, they overlap. They're the same exact thing. So to better illustrate this, let's bring our blue curve down a bit. So let's put our beginning of the curve on 20 and put it on 70. So let's put the beginning on 2070 and end it on 8070. So now you can see that, oh, and I need to bring this down too. So okay, so now we have the same exact curve. Okay, so what I can do with a cubic Bezier, which is different from what I can do with a quadratic Bezier, is I could make this a little wider. Okay, so basically, instead of starting my first dot on 40, 30, which is here, and my second dot on 60, 30, which is here, I can make them a little wider. So let's put this first one on 30, 30. Okay, and put the second one on 70, 30. See, now I have a much wider curve here, whereas I only have one dot and I could only do this kind of more pointier curve here. Okay, and I can even make it even wider. So I can go out even wider. I can make this 20 and I can make this 80 and really get a wide curve. Okay, so that's basically the difference. I have two dots pulling on my curve here, whereas on the quadratic Bezier, I only have one dot pulling this up. Now, by the same token, just as we saw that the T reflected the Q, made a reflection of the Q, on the cubic Bezier, we have the S. The S curve is the opposite curve. So let's go ahead and make this curve a little smaller here. So let's go ahead and start the curve right here. So let's start it on 1050. Okay. And then we're going to bring the curve all the way out to here. Okay. So we're going to make the ending of the curve on 3050. Okay, and we're going to work a little bit backwards. So since we're on going from 1050 to 3050, we're going to put our dots right here on 2050. So let's put it on 2050 and 2050. Okay, so now we should have a straight line. Very good. So let's bring it up. Let's bring the curve up. So let's pull the curve to about here and here. So essentially, we can duplicate our Q curve, our quadratic Bezier curve, by pulling these two dots in the same direction. So for example, I could bring this up to, let's see, to 30. Okay, and bring this one up to 30. And now we have double the amount of pull on those curves. That's why it's pulling it up that much. Okay, so now to reflect this curve, we need to do two things. The S curve is just like the T curve only needed one, which was the ending. Here we need the ending, which in this case is going to be 50-50. But we also need the reflection of the curve. Next part of the curve, we got to put the dot on how high we're going to bring it. So we got to bring the dot way down here. So let's bring the dots to 40-70. So 40-70. Oop, 70. And as you can see, since I brought the dots down to 40-70, it's a reflection of this curve right here. Now, if I brought this down to 40-90, it does the same curve, but it brings it out even more. Okay, so 40-70, and then we could do the same thing when we continue. We can do another S curve. We can do another S curve. Now our ending is going to be on 50-70. So I find that if I put the last dot in, I can at least see where I'm going to be. So then again, we're going to bring our dot up. So if we're here, we're going to bring our dot up to 60-30. Oops. I did this wrong. It's not 50-70, it's 70-50. There we go. And now we have our continuation of our curve here. Okay, so now you have an idea of how the Q curve and the C curve works. Okay, so just to reiterate, our quadratic Bezier has one dot that you manipulate, and our, let me bring this back, and our C curve has 2 dots that manipulate it. Okay? So if you have any further questions, please let me know. Have a wonderful day.